Blog Talk Radio.
Recruiting Animal here on June 3rd. That's June 3, 2015. I don't believe that these years keep going on. That's what I was going to say. Anyway, I was reading an article this week called Most People Suck at Saying No. And the author, her name is Eva Glass-Rudd. I think that's her name, and I think the blog was Happy Talent Blog or happytalent.com, something like that. Anyway, she said, if you want to be happy, you have to be able to say no without apology and without excuses. Because if you don't say no, you're going to end up doing what you don't want to do. You're going to end up doing what you don't want to do. And if you give an excuse, you're just inviting them, that other person, to ask again when your excuse doesn't apply. For instance, if you say, I would do it, but I'm busy today, they're going to ask you about tomorrow. This Eva also points out that people use a lot of tricks to make it hard for you to say no. They might suck up to you to make you feel obligated, because if someone is friendly to you, you're expected to be friendly to them. And in this case, that means doing what they want. Or if you say no to giving them everything they want, they might say, well, can you at least give me part of what I want? You know, that makes them seem needy because they really need something. They're bugging you about it, but not too demanding. They appear to be reasonable, and you look unreasonable if you say no. Number 3 technique, they'll also use social proof against you. Social proof. They'll say, look, everybody else is doing it, which means it's the normal thing to do. And if you still refuse, then you're not normal. And you know, you don't want to look bad, because then people are going to hate you. They really will. People will hate you. But she says, so what? Let them hate me. The trade-off is worth it. Remember that. And to be a good recruiter, you have to be ready to say no to people all the time. It doesn't matter if they feel hurt, and it doesn't matter if they hate you. You know what? Hate can't hurt you. Remember that. And if you think it can, you're going to end up sending a lot of inappropriate people to your hiring managers for interviews. Now, I'm going to close by saying, or reminding you, there's one place in the recruitosphere where you're free to say no. In fact, you're free to express all your honest negativity, because we'll probably hate you no matter what you say. And Jerry, what show is that?
The Recruiting Animal Show!
Didn't excite me today, okay? Just so you know.
I thought it was a great shout out.
Thank you, Maureen. I've got a lot on my mind, dude. To be spot on every Wednesday at 12:03 and a half.
My
come on. Lesser man could not pull it off. That's all I'm telling you.
Okay. Anything else?
Plenty of lesser men.
Before we get started.
What?
Anything else you have to say before we get started?
Nope, I got nothing.
Okay. Our guest is here. I checked before the show. His name is Daniel Chait. Daniel Chait, come on down.
Hey, how's it going?
Great. Glad you're here. Okay, I can
hear
you now. But you know what? I think you turned down your mic when you're in the green room because you don't want us to hear you when you sing. But you are going to sing, okay? And we're going to sing now and get it over with. And then you can talk like you usually do throughout the rest of the show. Are you ready?
What was that whole business about saying no and everything?
I cannot hear you again. Or maybe I just have to turn up my mic. Okay, go ahead. Okay, Maureen, are you...
Go ahead.
What are you going to say? What are you saying?
I'm ready.
I said, go ahead. Let's do it.
Okay. It's Love Me Like You Do by Ellie Goulding. I'm going to count to 3, and we're going to start. Okay? 1, 2, 3. Love me like you do. La la, love me like you do. Yeah, love me like you do.
Love me like you do.
Yeah, touch me like you do. Come on, Daniel.
Love me like you do. Love me like you do.
What are you waiting for?
Touch me like you do.
Yeah, should we do it one more time? Love me like
Love me like you do.
La la, love me like you do.
Love me
love me like you do. La la,
love me like you do. Love me
touch me like you do. Touch me like you do. What do you do? Okay, thank you, Daniel.
Guys, that was beautiful. I don't know what I was worried about.
You don't know how beautiful it was. Americans and Canadians have to learn to be willing to sing, even if they're not good singers, because singing is beautiful. Okay?
That's right.
And this guy's got young kids. You don't want to shame them, okay? You want them to be real
right.
people. Good. Thank you, Maureen. I can always count on you. Okay, look. What do you do, Daniel? Oh, don't tell me, because I'm gonna read the introduction. I know what you do, and I just want you to say yes or no, and correct me if I'm wrong. Is that okay?
Deal.
Okay. You are the CEO. Your name is Daniel Chait. Do you call yourself Danny or Dan or Dambo, or what do you call yourself?
Usually Daniel, but Dambo works. Never heard that before.
Me neither. Okay. You're the CEO of Greenhouse Recruiting Software. Your name is spelled Chait. Your brother,
Wrong.
I was telling Jerry, it's what?
Chait.
Chait. Your brother's a famous liberal journalist. Jerry's a very right-wing person. Okay, I wanted to say that. Anyway, and he told me...
Can I clarify something?
What?
I'm a staunch libertarian.
Okay, sorry.
There's a difference, dude.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Can I clarify something?
Yeah.
I'm an idiot about politics. There's a reason my brother does what he does, and I do what I do.
Okay. Let's leave your brother out of it. I couldn't resist. Okay. On Twitter, you're DH Chait. That's DHCHAIT. I got it right. And your company site is greenhouse.com. You are a guy who agrees with our contention on this show that hiring managers are the stupidest people in the world, and they need someone to hold their hand through every step of the recruiting process. So Greenhouse, as far as I understand it, is an applicant tracking system that isn't just a place to store data. It spoons feed people every step of the way, teaching them how to recruit. Is that right?
Yeah, you got the headline right. It's also, by the way, it's greenhouse.io, not greenhouse.com. But yeah, basically...
What?
Details matter.
I know.
So,
okay.
Look.
That changes everything right there. I'm thinking greenhouse.com. That's a cool web address.
Tell you what,
Greenhouse.io. No.
Tell you what, if you want to go shell out for the domain name to the guy and hand it off to me, I'd be more than grateful.
Okay, listen, talk into your phone. Just remember that. Okay, we're going to get really into the show now. Now, you told Jeremy you told Jeremy Roberts, our good friend at SourceCon, that being good at hiring isn't a secret. Hundreds of books, newsletters, and articles explain the same best practices over and over again. All you have to do, you say, is read Lou Adler, John Sullivan, ERE, Fistful of Talent, and you know what recruiting is all about. So since our audience here is all recruiters, everything you tell us, we should already know. Is that right?
Yeah, I think, there's a real issue here. We always try to say that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're just trying to implement the wheel. This stuff write down your questions ahead of time and ask them to your candidates. Write down their answers. That's a basic thing that most companies literally don't have in place. And so, yeah, I think that by and large, what needs to happen in recruiting in order to help companies get better is just make it easier for people to kind of systematize things and less up to these individual managers
Look,
make
I like it.
No,
make it
on
up
this
as they
show,
go.
he's just, hold on a second, Danny is just regurgitating what he says everywhere. You're not supposed to do that here. That's why we get you to sing, so you talk like a real person instead of a machine, okay?
So he's not supposed to tell you what he knows about his product and his service? He's supposed to now make stuff up he's never even thought of before? That's unfair.
He's not addressing the question, okay? I said recruiting has been discovered already. It's not anything new, okay? Everybody should know it. That's really what he's saying.
He's not talking about recruiting. This is the interviewing process. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, it's interviewing, it's sourcing, but yeah, I mean, it's the whole thing. And basically, like you say, everybody tries to make it up every time on their own and kind of leave it up to these hiring
managers. Do they
managers.
really? Or is that just kind of your mantra, even though most companies really do have a sound interviewing process in place?
There are companies that do. I don't think it's most. I don't think it's even close to most. I think it's
is your background in recruiting, Danny?
Yeah, I ran recruiting and HR at my last company. My original background is actually in electrical engineering. So I graduated from Michigan with an engineering degree. And
he's a programmer. Okay, he's a programmer who's run all the recruiting in a big global company. So
all right.
he knows a lot about it. He said he's interviewed hundreds of people. Okay, hundreds.
Almost
but what about
thousands, if you really think about it.
What about this book you recommended? Who? The A Method for Hiring by Jeff Smart and Randy Street. If I read that book, do I know everything I have to know about recruiting?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you could spend a lifetime and still learning, but yeah, I mean, it's a comprehensive system. It basically talks about the things that everybody talks about. You should have a scorecard where you define ahead of time what you're looking for. You should have a plan in place for how you're going to source, and you should measure all that stuff. You should be focused on
you know what? We'll get to that.
Evidence.
We'll get to that. Turn the machine off, okay? Let me. I'm going to get to your product. We've got a lot of time. I'm going to ask you.
I'm talking about the book.
Okay.
That's the table of contents from the book.
Okay, but isn't your product essentially you guys, you and John Strauss sat down, read a bunch of these books, and put it into a software so that there's like pop-up tips at every step of the way. But let's get to that later. I want to ask, we don't usually get a CEO here, a guy who's done a lot of hiring. We're all about recruiters. I want to ask you some other questions. Is that okay? I'll get to your stuff. I'll get to it. Here's our standard survey questions. How many people did you recruit on Twitter last year?
Did I personally or did my company?
Your company.
Not that many.
You know what? It's a bad reflection on you when you're not on
Slippery.
a good phone. Are you on a cell phone?
I am.
That's not a good idea, okay? I say on the instructions, use a landline. Okay?
It's 2015. We don't have landlines.
No, you should, okay? Because cell phones are not good for business. I'm just telling you, okay? Now, look, how many people... Okay, so Twitter is not a big deal in sourcing. Would you say that? And I have to say, I want everybody to know, part of what these guys do, and I'll get into it later, they benchmark what all of their clients do. They're keeping all kinds of big data. They know all the secrets about what really works and what doesn't because they track it in what their clients do. So this guy's, he's a magician. I want to ask him what he does because he knows what works, okay? So Twitter, you're not telling your recruiters, you guys get on Twitter because that's not something you've been told works really well. Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, there's a small number of tweets that really engage people, but generally when you post, hey, we're hiring every day, it turns people off. Nobody wants to hear that.
Okay. How many did you recruit from Facebook?
Probably none.
Pinterest?
0.
Okay. What about, maybe here, what about GitHub?
I think probably a couple.
Just a couple? It's not a major source.
Last year we grew from like 10 people to 50. So it was a ton of inside referrals. I mean, it depends very much on the stage you're at. And so for us, like in that stage, tons of it was referrals.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. So let's forget about like even Stack Overflow, Entelo. We shouldn't talk about those for you. Okay. Have you ever had to fire somebody?
Yes.
Well, why? I mean, you're the recruiting expert. What did you do wrong?
Lots of things. I mean, at the end of the day, there's no such thing.
End of the day, it's an animal bad word.
Oh, that's right. Shit, I forgot.
You had your marketing person read my website. You didn't read it yourself.
No, I did read it. We had a whole thing about end of the day online. Sorry. But look, it is about taking a chance on someone, and the only guaranteed way of knowing if you made the right hire is to work with the person throughout their career and see how they do. But of course, you can't do that with every candidate. So you have to take, a guess. And the question is, how can you make the best educated guess you can to make the best likelihood of a good hire?
We're going to get to your recommendation. You're very big on behavioral questioning and reference checking, and yet they don't always work. Is that what you're telling us?
Nothing always works.
Well,
Absolutely.
What percentage of the time, if you follow this method that everybody knows for recruiting, what percentage of the time should you be hiring someone who's right for the job that you don't have to fire?
I think if you're having less than 90% of people where you think you made a good hire, you've got a problem.
Really?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What about? Okay. So, according to you, recruiting right now is generally based on what you call folklore, right?
That's right.
Yeah, okay. But as I said, you guys collect what you claim to be a lot of high-quality data, and it's generating insight into what works and what doesn't. And some of the questions you said you address really puzzled me. You said, for instance, the big data can show you which interview questions you should ask. How does that work?
So let's imagine you have two hiring pipelines set up, and you look at the performance of which goes through which candidates go through each of those two hiring pipelines. You can easily tell based on pass rates and based on ultimately which of the candidates that you hired succeeded or didn't, how well factored, how accurate, how valid your interview questions are. I think.
Yeah, but hold on a second.
Problem,
but they're a group. They're a set of questions. Not interview, not individual questions, are they? How do you measure the individual questions?
Well, look, there's no magic bullet. It's not like an oracle. I mean, I think people have a misconception that big data is like a magician. You can just like throw questions at the wall and then it'll always give you the magic answer.
You gave me that idea. I got it from you.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean. You can, you set up experiments. You test, like I say, if you want to vary the question and see the response, you vary the question and see the response. If you want to vary I had a conversation.
I'm going to quote you, and I'll move on, just so people know I'm not wrong, okay? You said, which interview questions should I ask? How will it affect my hire if I add another interview? What about, how do you know to go about that? If you add another interview, so then you can test what?
So I had a conversation with the CEO this week, and he said to me, I wasn't getting the throughput in my pipeline that I needed. So what did we do? Put an A/B test in where we created the same opening but had a radically different set of interview questions. So instead of 7 steps to go through it, it was 3 steps to go through it. And instead of behavioral, it was whiteboards, etc. And then measure the results of that experiment. And yeah, absolutely, they found that there were certain questions they were asking that had absolutely no bearing on the outcome. They made more hires. The hires were of higher quality, and they did it quicker. So people can kind of accrete like layer upon layer upon layer of crust in their interview process. Because every time they have a thought, they throw it in as another question. And every once in a while you should test pulling some of that out and see if it hurts you. If it does, don't do it.
This same thing with adding another interview. So if you're interviewing twice or giving to people 3 interviews, and you add a 4th. That's going to show up. You'll be able to tell if you're getting better results with 4 interviews than 3?
Yeah, you'll see. Are we collecting more data or less? Are we taking substantially longer to get people through the pipeline? Are good candidates turned off? Like you can look at in relation to why candidates don't make it through. Is it because they quit our process and took another job before we even finished? Or did we turn people away because of culture fit or a particular skill that we uncovered?
Okay, I'm losing you. I don't know what you're talking about now. Anybody else got any questions for Dan before I
move
on?
Sure, I've got a question. When you guys began this conversation,
Alejandro's in New York. Just so you know, he's one of yours. Okay.
Yeah, I'm in New York. So when you started the conversation, you said that you're seeking to eliminate recruiting folklore, or the elements of recruiting folklore. I'd like a definition there. What are we talking about when we say recruiting folklore? How are you going about that?
So let's take one aspect of recruiting, which is sourcing. Where do you get your candidates? if you ask most companies, like, how do you guys find candidates? What you'll hear is a mix of basically the habits of the people they've hired. So you hire somebody who's like a LinkedIn jockey and they sit on LinkedIn all day. You hire somebody else that, posts a bunch of ads on different job boards. Hire somebody else that like goes to meetups and tries to network with people. Like, there's your recruiting strategy. It's not based on any kind of master plan, any kind of evidence, any kind of measurements. It's based on folklore. It's based on, I did this at my last job. And so that's really the type of thinking that we're looking to help people get past. That's what I mean by folklore. Does that make sense?
It does. Thanks.
Is that what you've seen?
Yeah, that's how we do it.
Yeah. I mean, you get a lot of that. I think that it depends on the organization.
Absolutely.
How effective are job boards, since you mentioned them? Do you have stats on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's two kind of main ways of job board will work. There's the kind of general purpose kind of volume-based job boards, your Indeeds and those guys. And then there's the, highly targeted niche sites, your Stack Overflows, as you mentioned, or Dribbble. And they're very different. So depending on what you're looking for, if you're looking for a designer or a developer, I would say absolutely go to those niche sites. If you just want some candidate flow because, hey, you're hiring an office manager, throw something up on, Simply Hired and, you get your candidate flow. It works really well. I think where you mix the two is where you really have an issue. If you're just advertising on Indeed for, JavaScript programmer, good luck,
Okay, hey, Animal. I have accepted the responsibility of being Jeff Newman's question asker since he's in a position now where he can't ask questions or what have you. I think it's going to end up being a bit overwhelming for me. So I'm just going to ask 2 questions, but then I'm out. I'm done. I'm resigning as his interpreter. Question number 1. Why doesn't Greenhouse allow you to customize reports or pay for an add-on? And then secondly, past performance equals present performance. Why wouldn't you repeat what works? I'm done now, Newman. Alejandro is now your interpreter. Later.
Oh, thanks.
On question number 1, I feel like you might be operating on outdated information. We do have a customized reporting add-in called Greenhouse Analytics.
Great.
It's based on Amazon Redshift and Tableau, and lets you build and customize your own reports as historical data, etc. I don't understand the second question.
If past performance, I believe he's talking about folklore. Yep. If your folklore works for you, what's the problem? Why wouldn't you just repeat that?
Right. Okay. So the issues are, I'd say, maybe twofold. So number 1, you may be wrong about what worked for you in the past.
Ooh.
So if you don't have accurate information or complete information, about your historical actions and their results, which most people don't, then you're kind of guessing that it worked, right? And also, you're bringing that into a new environment with new jobs, a new employer brand, a new labor situation. So it may not continue to work in any event. That's kind of point number 1, is the things that maybe you think used to work maybe aren't so effective after all. Point number 2 is you don't know what you weren't doing to begin with, right? So just because you were focused on that one technique and got some results, you may have kind of found something that worked, but you could have been doing stuff that's way better. Maybe you should have been running a referral program. Maybe you should have been doing campus recruiting. And without stepping back and looking at a holistic kind of overview, you're just basically following your habits. And so I think, you should always be thoughtful about the overall mix and not just keep doing the same thing over and over again.
So it's fair to say that you're an advocate of measure everything.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. If you look at the way people advertise their products and try to get customers, they're incredibly systematic about how they measure, incredibly systematic about how they approach where they're going to advertise and how they're going to get interest. You look at the way people buy job ads. It's like Mad Men days. It's like the 50s. You go and buy 6-figure job ad spend somewhere, and then maybe later down the road in a year you might or might not get some candidates. It's crazy. You go buy Google keywords to sell your product. You bid on them down to the penny, and you measure it and update it in real time. So it's night and day. And I think ultimately that's where all of recruiting should be headed.
What about people who don't have, like your kind of software, it's for corporations. It's not for third-party recruiters. Am I right about that?
That's right.
Okay. So what about a third-party recruiter? Can they do the same kind of measurement that you're doing without the technology?
I think it's hard without technology to do like systematic measurement, but I think they absolutely should be doing the same kinds of things, right? Because they're ultimately trying to create candidate flow as well. So
okay. The best way to make first contact. The best way to make first contact with candidates: phone, email, text, if possible. Do you have any stats on that? Any feedback for us?
Greatly depends on the candidate, right? It greatly depends on are you going after executives? Are you going after technical people? What labor market you're in? But what I would say generally to that question is there's no silver bullet. There's no one thing that you should do always. Like, yeah, there's lots of stuff you need to do. Candidates take 6, 7, 10 tries sometimes. Persistence pays off. So,
so you know what? You kind of screw me up here. I listen to your videos, and I like them. This guy's got a lot of good videos online, okay? But, he kind of said, I can tell you exactly which interview questions to ask, and here he's on the show. No, I can't. I can't tell you okay? And now I'm saying, well, what works? Phone calls, email, text? Well, it depends, I can't tell you that. So, this is big data. It isn't as good as it seems, okay?
Listen, if the answer is as simple as, everybody should just send phone calls, well, then you wouldn't need any automation or measurement whatsoever. The exact point, the whole idea here is, you do need to figure out what's working in your situation, and you need to work, and people haven't been able to do that before.
Well, give us an example at least of some. You said, okay, it's going to vary. Pick some jobs and tell us what works best for those.
So let me give you one example. When I ran recruiting in my last company, we used to advertise for a given developer position on both Stack Overflow and a specialized financial site called eFinancial Careers, right? And what you found is you got, candidate flow from eFinancial Careers way higher volume than Stack Overflow, right? But what you found is that the people on Stack Overflow were much more technically focused, and when they got to aspects of cultural fit and did they want to work at my type of business, which was a consulting type of business, it was a much better fit. The people on eFinancial Careers, they wanted to work in banks, by and large. And so that's an example of a direct measurement that you can take and say, great, for us in this context, it makes a lot more sense for us to advertise in a better pool for this audience. But, hey, if I was a bank, it'd be the opposite. So when I say it depends, it's not because I'm being mealy-mouthed. It's because it depends. And the whole point is there's no magic bullet. People have been saying for years, hey, recruiting's a hassle. We're going to simplify it to a push button, take it off your plate so you can get back to your real work. I think that's BS. I think recruiting is hard. It's very, very competitive. You have to be very, very good at it.
Okay, so let me ask a question. Now I know you can't tell me from statistics anything about this. I just want to know your opinion. The greatest weakness question. Okay, you claim that I've seen you say anyone who has had success has also had a lot of failure. And you give the example of these guys in the garage. Believe me, it wasn't so much fun in the garage. They didn't know they were going to be successful, okay? So then if you ask people to tell you when you're interviewing or when you've interviewed in the past or when you advise your recruiters, do you ask people to tell you what their worst failures were, and do you ever, rule them out on the basis of what they tell you?
I think it's generally a pretty lazy question. It's not clear to me if I'm asking you that, why, what am I hoping to get out of it? What does a good answer look like? Or what decision would I make based on that answer? So I generally don't think it has a whole lot of value. And I think it makes you look like you haven't really planned for the interview a whole lot. So I don't think it's going to impress great talent, to be honest. So yeah, I don't see a whole lot of utility asking that question.
People say it's go ahead, sorry.
No, look, if you're looking, so one thing I try to look for is things like resilience or, people that want to actually, find out problems and try to tackle them that weren't necessarily problems they were given to solve. So people that step outside their job and take initiative. And those are great behaviors for lots of different jobs, and there's really good behavioral interviewing that you can do to get at that. But I think asking what's your greatest weakness, it's just kind of silly.
Okay, you know what? You gave a very interesting example of your office manager, of somebody who likes to go out and solve other people's problems. She's a problem eater. You said she's transformed your business. A humble office manager whom you just said a few minutes ago, you don't even have to worry which job board you put the order on. You just slash it out there. But you said she's phenomenal, and the way, and you told us on this video how to determine you're talking to a problem solver. First of all, do you think you should be looking for problem solvers for every job? And now tell us how you do it.
So I don't think for every job, although I do think that's one area where for most jobs. But there's certainly some jobs where you want people that are going to be satisfied doing the same thing every day. and people that are going to be too antsy or too uncomfortable, continuing to do a repetitive or mundane job. You should be upfront about who you're looking for that's going to like that, because there will be someone who loves that job. There's somebody who wants to sit there and, count the beans and file everything away. It's not for everyone. But to your point about, how do you find people that are going to, be problem eaters? Ask behavioral interview. I mean, my question on that is, tell me about a time when you solved a problem that wasn't given to you. And then drill in with skeptical follow-up. Why did you solve that problem? Why did no one else solve the problem? When you had a solution, did you do it or did you ask? How did you ask? What was the outcome of the solution? And the swing between people who have solid answers for that and people who really don't is enormous, and it's been backed up time and again. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Don't you find, though, that people, or maybe people have to, reach back and pull out examples out of their memory on the spur of the moment? I don't know if that always works. That's my opinion about these behavioral I do
think that is a potential shortcoming of behavioral interview, no question. But I think generally, by and large, like the people who have a flood of those type of stories that are really impressive, they stand right out, right? So in this case of my office manager that you asked about, I asked this question. I basically sat back for half an hour while she told me story after story of saving companies from bankruptcy, bringing and building up to fire code, stepping in the way of a lawsuit. These aren't like little things that your office manager files the paper clips away, right? And since she's been here, she does that same type of stuff, all the time. She's added to our company culture. She's got fire equipment installed in our office. I mean, it's just the ways that people like that contribute is just motivated by a whole different set of things, and they really want they're restless if they're not doing all they can.
Okay, a few more of these, then we'll talk about your product because we're at the halfway point. Okay, can you base, if you're a recruiter who hires the same kind of people all the time or a number of times, should you be able to tell your client, based on the kind of data that your technology is gathering, how long the search is going to take, how many candidates are required, how many interviews are required?
Yeah, I think the more you're hiring the same type of person over and over again in the same market, the better your quality of that information should be. So absolutely, after you've done dozens of searches for SQL administrator in Manhattan, you should have really good numbers on that. Here's how many candidates it takes to get from the top of my funnel to the bottom. Here's how the pass rates are at each stage. Now look, there's always going to be some variation in any funnel. The sales funnel is the same way. But generally, you should be able to predict that with a reasonable degree of accuracy.
See, because one thing, we'll get to it, but one thing in your planning stage that your software advises people to do, you say they're supposed to schedule how many interviews they're going to have with each candidate for a specific job. How do they determine that in advance?
Well, again, it's a question about how much evidence you have. And so at the very beginning, when you've never made this hire before and you haven't had any candidates come through, you have to make a guess. And so typically companies will start with one of our templates or framework to start with and say, great, we're going to do a screening call, we're going to do a phone interview, we're going to send a take-home test, we're going to bring you face-to-face for 4 interviews, we're going to do a reference check and make an offer. Like that's a very boilerplate, process. And there's standard things you look for at each of those steps, culture fit, different skills, the person's career objectives, what have you. You can start with something pretty basic like that and then improve over time as you get better data and measurement. So, there's no question that the first time you make a hire of a new type, you've got limited experience and limited information to draw from. There's no getting around that. And so I think ultimately, having a system that lets you optimize and measure is really the best way to improve that. And, that's how it works.
Okay. Anybody got a question before I start asking him about his own product? Anybody online got a question? Nobody? Okay. They always say don't let people talk. Well, I let people talk. Okay. Now your basic premise is that companies stink at hiring. You're actually going out and telling people you are dumb. You guys are so stupid. You need me to guide you every step of the way. And that's what my software is going to do. I'm going to be your parent. And I'm going to guide you through the process, okay? And
if you're applying to be my head of marketing, you're not getting the job. I'll tell you
okay, right actually, I would do a very good job. I know tons about you, more than I know about most people, okay? Now,
fair enough.
How do companies usually interview? This is what you say. Most people simply grab someone off their desk who has a full-time job doing something else, who's busy, and at the last minute they say, go into this conference room or get on the phone and talk to a stranger and tell us if we should hire him. And they don't necessarily give the guy a resume. You don't have a job description. You don't know what the job criteria are. You just get thrown in there, and you end up asking people about their hobbies, and then the person gets thrown from one ignoramus to another who asks the same stupid questions over and over again. I've never heard that story before, okay? I never heard that they were that bad. I mean, I believe it because they act like they're that stupid.
It happens every single day of the week.
How do you know?
I've seen it. I mean, I've participated in interview processes at dozens of companies. I talked to hundreds of companies in my role here, at Greenhouse, talking to our prospects. Like, more than anything, that story resonates with people. It's like, do you know? If you ask recruiters, like, do you know what questions your team is asking when they get in that room? Like, no, they don't, by and large. It's not that everyone doesn't, because a lot of people do, but by and large, companies really haven't planned that out. They haven't given the tools to the people that make the most difference, the most impact, which is the interviewers themselves. Absolutely.
Okay, so you're telling me as well that if you've got somebody, a good programmer in your company, you can't just throw that person in with another guy, and he can come out after a half an hour and tell you, this is a good programmer, you should hire him. Because you've said that you want to be with amazing people, whatever chance. One software programmer can't talk to another for half an hour and tell you if this guy's amazing or not?
Sometimes they can, but you mean, because they probably don't. I mean, there's nothing against programmers, but like, they're programmers. They're not trained at interviewing. I mean, there's been lots of research on the point of structured interviewing and the idea that there are certain interview techniques that work really well. So most people haven't been prepared for that, I think. And so if you put people in a room, they're just as likely to ask a question about an API that they were working on yesterday, or a language feature that they happen to know about that makes them very clever, and really isn't very valid determinant of the person's quality at all. So that's one point. I think the other point is, even if they may have some capability to be predictive, to be good at it, let's face it, you're going to have candidates interview with multiple different people at your company. And if those people aren't coordinated, if I'm not sure that I'm asking question A and you're asking question B, then, you run the risk of everybody kind of like stepping on each other's toes, asking the same questions over and over again, which as a candidate is like a miserable experience. It's boring. And as a company, it doesn't really give you a good opportunity to assess the candidates,
Okay, so what happens with your software is the person gets, everybody's pre-scheduled to interview a candidate, and they get their calendar sends them a notice when the time is close, and also a package, an interview kit, telling them exactly what you're looking for and what questions to ask. Is that right?
You got it.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
It's like an automated attendant. It's like an admin assistant. Hey,
like why would you not do that? It just doesn't. I don't think there's anyone in the world arguing like, no, it's a bad idea to give your interviewers questions to ask. Like, have them write down the answers. But it's just not been done before. It's not been systematized before. That's really like our thing. That's really what we kind of specialized at first.
And you're selling like hotcakes. You're a phenomenon, right? This is like killing the market. Am I right?
I think we're doing pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so you've got a killer interview process. That's what I saw you call it. People don't like it when I quote themselves back to them, but I like doing it. Okay.
I love it. First of all, you've seen and read more of what I've written and said in my life than anyone, than my parents.
Okay.
I'm
great.
Very impressed.
Okay. And anyway, so there's 3 different categories of things that you have to cover in an interview. First of all, skills, then personality, then qualifications, and other details. Okay. So the skills, you say the only way to test skills is by, or determine skills is by testing. So you're always thinking in terms of IT programmers. You say they have to program during the interview. But what if it's not a programmer? What are you going to have somebody count on a calculator, or what are you going to do?
No, it's not limited at all to programmers. So let me give you a couple examples. If you're hiring a salesperson, what are the things a salesperson needs to do? Well, in my company, a salesperson needs to be able to deliver a cold call. You know how I test that? Have them give a cold call. So we sit there across the table, like ring, 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 hello. And of course, you prep them a little bit for what you're looking for, and set them up with the right context. But like at the end of the day, you're either going to freeze up in the moment or you're going to deliver a good cold call, right? I hire a finance person. They need to build Excel models. Guess what I'm going to have you do during the interview process, right? We're going to open up a laptop. I'm going to watch you in Excel, and we're going to give you some structure to that. We're going to give you a task to do, but I want to see you do it.
Okay. If a third-party recruiter is sending someone into you, should they depend on you doing that part, or should they be testing these people like that in advance?
It comes down to the evidence that the company needs. If I have a recruiter that I trust, that I've worked with for a long time, and I have good faith and good evidence that they do that amount of assessment ahead of time, I can assume that it's been done. Generally, I don't.
You can't assume based on. Hold on. You can't assume based on the last job on the resume.
No, you're kidding, right?
No, I'm not.
People, like, the world is full of mediocre people doing amazing things. Like, yeah, there's great people at all kinds of companies, but there's also people that are not great at all kinds of companies. So just the fact that you are, a programmer at some amazing tech company or a salesperson at a great sales company doesn't mean it's not proof. It's maybe a little bit of evidence, but you certainly better back that up with a check.
But you also say, go ahead, finish your point.
And what made you successful at your last job may have nothing to do with what's at this job. So we talked about a salesperson earlier. Salesperson is a wildly different job based on the company, based on the sales process, sales methodology. So assuming that they were a successful person at their last company and therefore they'll be successful at this company, I think is a big mistake.
Okay. I could go into that too. There's certain, like these rainmakers, they say don't hire them for a small company. They had a lot of support at a big company, and they might not just strike out, have to do everything themselves. But you also said if you don't have skills in a certain field yourself, you should get an expert to back you up on your interviews of that candidate. Is that right?
Yeah. So I was giving a talk at a startup conference. You had a lot of people that were just getting going. They're a 2-person startup, and they're trying to hire an engineer. So that was kind of like the context. It's like, hey, if I don't have any programmers in my founding team, I need to hire a programmer. What do I do? Or you see programmers start a company, they go, I don't have any salespeople. I have no sales experience. How do I hire my first salesperson? So really in the context of like bootstrapping a new job, I think, bring in some outside experts. So, you may have it at a larger company where you've gotten to a certain stage and you've never hired, a head of operations or a head of finance or a head of HR. And I think, if you're trying to make those hires in areas where you don't have any capability in-house, you should rely on...
Is that you? Who's got the office noise behind them there?
Not me. I'm sitting still.
Okay. You know what? I think I'm going through two things that are too common. I want you to teach the third-party recruiters listening to the show something they don't know. But here is a question I have to ask. You said personality traits should be half the interview. You want to clarify people's motivations and figure out if they want the job and fit with the company. Half the interview on personality?
Yeah, I think if you look at the reasons that people succeed and fail at companies, a ton of it has to do with their motivation, their fit for the environment, their values. It's huge stuff. And by the way, also one of the most poorly done and overlooked at most companies. So they tend to throw technical problems at people in the interview process, but have most companies really got their act together on culture fit, personality type, motivations, expectations? No. So I think that stuff is super important.
Well, tell us how.
How to do it? Well, I think there's two real ways. We talked about behavioral interviewing. That's a great way to get at those motivations and personality traits. I also think
no. How do you get at their? Okay, the personality trait was the problem solving we did. How do you get at their motivations?
Yeah. So I think the other way is really through references. I think people emphasize references as a way to understand your candidate. People think of references as like, at the end of the process, you've already decided to hire the person, and I'm going to call their former boss and hear what a great guy they are. It really help, right? But if you have real questions about somebody's motivations, is this person a job hopper? Are they in it for the money? Are they passionate about the domain? Like, what do they really like, and why do they really want to do the things they do? You can use those background reference checks as a great way to get at some of that. You can talk about, you can take a reference call and you can say, where would this person be in the top 5 of who you've worked with in the past? And when they say, they'd easily be in the top 5, they'd be number 3, they'd be number 2, Say, great, what was the difference between that person and number one, right? Or, hey, when I talked to this person, they said that, they're sometimes easily bored by details. Is that something that you noticed? And you can really get some insight from, people that used to work for them. Obviously, generally, people they give you as a reference name is going to be someone trusted and who's going to say generally good things. But within that range of it's a good recommendation, there's a lot of room there, there's a lot of real estate to learn a lot about the person. So between behavioral interviews and background reference checks, you can really get a pretty good picture of what the person's about, why they're interested in your job, and what they'll be like to work with.
How long does your reference check take?
2 or 3 calls. I mean, it depends on scheduling. It can take a few days.
Oh, no, but I mean one call to a reference check. Half an hour, 20 minutes?
No, 15, 20 minutes. You got to respect people's time.
Okay. You said you kind of set it up like this. You tell the candidate, when I call your references, what are they going to tell me about your strengths and weaknesses? So you get them to confess ahead of time. Is that a general rule with you?
I wouldn't say it's a general rule, but I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when you get on the phone, you say, Bob is a great guy. He told me, did you experience, and XYZ, whatever he told you, did you experience that, right? Is that exactly your format? Because you didn't tell that now.
It's close.
Okay.
I don't think it's a good idea to go on the radio and give the whole script away. But yeah, that's
Why not?
Are you calling other than listed references as well?
I'm trying to say. I'm learning how to say no. A wise man told me that about an hour ago.
Yeah, okay. So come on, I'm asking you stuff that you've already said all over the internet. Alex has a question for you. Go ahead.
Are you calling other than listed references? Are you digging a little deeper than just the people they're giving you?
Yeah, for senior people, definitely. Not as a general rule, but I think for senior people, definitely.
Okay.
Background references. Yeah.
Okay. So let's go to the other part. So we didn't talk about planning the sourcing. I wanted to focus on the killer interview process. But then the final process is also very important. It's usually done in a very sloppy way, the selection process. Right? I'm right about that, right?
Agreed.
Okay. So you want to chat about it a bit?
I would love to. That'd be great. I mean, one kind of interesting point about this is I don't know if you've seen, Cass Sunstein has a book out now called Wiser, which is about how groups make decisions. And as I was reading that book, it's basically saying the same things that we've been saying at Greenhouse, which is like when you get a group of people in the room and ask them to make a decision together, if you're not careful, there's a lot of really major ways that those conversations can go completely off the rails. So people tend to look at the opinions of others and overweight their confidence as opposed to their own opinion, right? And so you get these kind of information cascades where the first person who speaks, their view is overweighted. You get status cascades where the most important person in the room, people want to know what the boss thinks before they open their mouth, and then they all say, yes, sir. Not to mention the very basics of people generally don't remember all the candidates they met with. They don't remember what they asked them. They don't remember what the answers were, what they thought about them. Those views can change over time. So yeah, I think the kind of post-interview huddle where you get everyone around a table and chat about the candidates is riddled with errors, and if you're not careful about it, is a major source of hiring mistakes.
Okay, so what you have to do during the interview then is give everybody the exact same questions to ask. Is that what you?
Totally.
Okay, so
yeah,
and they score them on a scale of 1 to 10 or something like that. How do they score them?
Yeah, I'm not a big guy on numbers because the next thing everybody wants to do is take an average of those numbers and hire the one at the top of the list, which I think is silly. So we really just ask you to evaluate them as did they clear the bar or not.
Okay.
And by collecting the same data from lots of different interviews across lots of different candidates, you actually get a pretty fine-grained view of the people, even with just a kind of thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah. So you get these 5 people who have interviewed this person, and they can look at their reports and then make the decision objectively. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be subjectivity here, but I think the real issue is when you get together to discuss a candidate at the end of the process, there's sort of 3 questions you really want to have answered. Number 1, of course, where's the candidate strongest and weakest? Everyone's different, and you're never going to have, you might have that like purple squirrel or whatever they talk about where they're perfect at everything, but generally you have trade-offs to make. Number 2, what don't we have enough evidence about? So where have we said this is an important criteria for us to make the hire, but this candidate, for whatever reason, we don't have the data we want on them. And then number 3, where does the team disagree about this candidate? Where has someone said they're really strong on leadership and another one said they're really weak? And I would say if you're going to get together and spend your time talking about candidates, focusing on those 3 questions is a really important way to avoid mistakes and make smart decisions.
Okay. And if you're a third-party recruiter, and now you've scared me. I just never realized it was this bad, okay? I mean, I know they do dumb things. You find them the one person in the country who can do the job. They say, we have to get 3 people to meet him, and we can't get them all in town on the same day. He's only here one day. He lives on the other side of the country. Too bad, okay? So they're foolish. I understand that. But this foolish, you've made them seem like they're all on acid or something. What are we supposed to do as people outside the company? How do we apply this discipline? Should a third-party recruiter say, look, Miss Hiring Manager, I just want to make sure things run smoothly on the inside. I'm going to, can we work on a list of questions? Or usually you imagine they know what they're talking about, maybe even better than you. So what would you do now? Now that you know, what would you do if you were on the outside?
Yeah, and no, I've been there. In my last company, we used to, we had a very rigorous selection process. We would hire, people that were fantastic, and then we would put them on client projects, and the clients would insist on re-interviewing them before they went on the project. And what we learned very quickly was the clients were completely random. They would have absolutely crazy objections to some of the best people we ever hired, and they would fall totally in love with people that that weren't necessarily the best for their roles, and it was based on complete nonsense. It was based on the fact that the guy was confident, had a good handshake, or happened to have one particular library, API thing on his resume or what have you. You just didn't know. So I've been in that position. I think, you hit the nail on the head. Actually, is you should have an understanding and agreement with your customer as an outside recruiter about what exactly are you going to put the people through before I get to see them. And I want to know what the product is that you're sending me. What analysis have you done on them? What questions have you actually asked them? And only then can I actually have some basis for understanding why you think this guy's good or that guy's bad. So yeah, definitely you should have that agreement. The other thing to note, though, keep in mind, is staffing agencies or outside recruiters, they play a role at the top of the funnel down through a couple of steps in, but they're not your whole recruiting process as a company. So when an agency sends you people, you're not just going to give them a job offer sight unseen. You have to do your own homework as a company. It's just how the system has to work. And so, you need to do enough homework as an outside agency that you're not wasting my time. I want you to send me good, reasonably qualified leads that I can then do my interviews on and have a reasonable chance of hiring. But what I don't want, is you're going to bring the person up, and they're ready for me to just give an offer to and have them start. Obviously I have to do my own homework. And the person has to meet with me and get sold on my company anyway. So there's kind of no skipping that process.
Yeah, but the whole point here is that you say these guys, you gave a good example. He ran a global consulting firm or something like that.
Yeah.
So you were sending out consultants, and your clients were as dumb as anybody else, and they didn't know how to screen the candidates. So that was a really good description. So we're doing the same thing. I don't know. Okay. Anybody got a comment on that, Alejandro? To discipline?
I think that he's right that you have to get a sense of what questions they're going to ask. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to, tailor your approach.
You do it?
I do. Well, it depends on the search too. I mean, if I'm going through a VMS and it's just something quick and dirty where you got to get a candidate in front of somebody, not as much. If you're doing more thoughtful, retained stuff, you better know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Last question. Mike Cox, did you want to say something?
No, it provides more control. When I was on the outside third party, it just helps to know what people are going to ask about and what you need to make sure that your candidate is prepared to answer. And then on the inside, you need to prep your hiring managers because they're not, they do what they do. They're not professionals in interviewing, so they need to be prepared to. Okay,
so you're a director of recruiting inside a 500-person company. Is it as bad as Daniel suggests, or is he just scaring us in the market to buy his product?
It is pretty bad because again, it's like hiring managers knocking out a candidate because they have a horrible resume. Well, they're not being hired to write resumes for us, so stop looking at that. But
exactly.
At the same time, hiring manager or a sales manager is hired to drive revenues and acquire new accounts and develop his or her sales executives, not really to interview. So we have to work with them and build up their skills in interviewing and reviewing resumes and digging deeper in the right areas.
John Strauss, Daniel's partner, said that sometimes you can have great recruiters on the inside of a company, but you've got blockheads that they have to work with. Like I think he used the example of an arrogant CTO, Chief Technical Officer, who thinks he knows everything. And so what they have to do is use this software for a while, get the data, and show them where they're screwing up based on the data. And they can use the data to create a revolution in the company. Is that right, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, I think when so I've sat on both sides, right? I've been a hiring manager, I've been a recruiter. And there's a breakdown both ways. The number one way to kind of resolve that breakdown and get back on the same page is through data. So if I'm saying as a hiring manager, geez, Mr. Recruiter, I opened up this role, 6 weeks ago, and where the hell are my candidates? What's that based on? What's your benchmark? What expectation do you have for how many candidates you're going to get when and what's going to happen? And on the other side, as a recruiter, you sit there and you go like, hey, you said you were going to go through your LinkedIn profile and give me 5 recommendations of people I should reach out to. You never did. Hey, you were going to read through the interview, questions and help correct them, or you were going to work with me on a job ad, or you said you were going to go speak at a meetup and you didn't. So there's expectations on both sides, and those expectations tend to be hidden. And so if you can pull any kind of data benchmark plan together and communicate on that, then it becomes less about he said, she said, and more about how are we doing against the plan and what should we do better.
I don't think I'll have time for my last question, but I have to add this. You guys share the data of your different clients with the whole community. So everybody gets to find out what works best and what doesn't work across the customer base. Is that right?
So we provide an aggregated and anonymized data. I want to be very, very clear about that. Your interview notes are not going to go to the guy next door. But overall percentages, so for example, you send out a survey to your candidates. You ask them questions about how do was it a good interview process? Were you treated courteously? Did they ask hard questions? We share those as benchmarks across companies so that you not only have questions about how did we do in the past and what are we strong and weak on, but how do we compare to our competition and what could we be doing better? So, yeah, I do think that, looking at broader data than just your own company is useful, and we try to do that.
No, I thought it was very powerful if it's done. Now, the final question I was going to ask was, you said that hiring a recruiter, if you don't have one in your company, it's a super asset. You get better people, and it takes a real load off of the senior executives. So, I know you're a big fan of Lou Adler and Josh Burson. I was going to ask you, some questions from Lou Adler's recruiting scorecard, but I just don't have time to do that. Is there anything we didn't ask you that you might give a tip to third-party recruiters?
No, I think you really got at the heart of it, which is really around, using data, being thoughtful about questions. I mean, like I said, you did more homework about me than anyone. I was really
doesn't mean I presented it well. Just like you said, doesn't mean I presented it well. Okay.
Well, I don't call people blockheads. I'll give you that.
Yeah. Okay, but it's essentially what you say. I mean, really, I told you it's a horror story the way you guys describe it. And here you got Mike Cox, who's a calm, kind of reasonable person, backing you up. I was shocked. Now, Jerry hasn't said one word since the beginning. He usually does an after show. Jerry, are you still awake, or are you still here? I don't think so. No, he's gone. Yeah, does anybody else want to lead it? Anybody else want to lead an after show, or are we finished? We're finished. Don't worry about it, Alejandro. Daniel Chait, thank you!